Working with elevated levels of CK, creatine kinesis, and working with movement lesson, is it something that needs to be done? Absolutely. Matter of fact, movement lesson is key to doing that. And I just want to show you the easiest way to look at it. When you're working with fluid dynamics, and that's what our body is, when you're going to the space conferences, we're just referred to as the bag of bones. Nothing's connected really. We're connected, but we're not really connected. Our bodies, not like our skeletal system actually touches the ground. It doesn't. And the reason the skeletal system is so important, especially with what I practice, is for that articulation and buoyancy, right? Our skeletal system, people can say, I'm using muscle to do this. This would be more muscle-based. But when I'm actually using skeletal buoyancy to do something, right, I can do a movement completely different based off my skeletal system. But when the skeletal system is in functional movement mode, right, that's when the muscles know what to do. That's when the fascia knows what to do, all of that. So to do it reverse and say I'm going to do a scratching, massage, fascia release, no, maybe for you, but not your child, because that's not the way they develop. I've covered this a lot about being jaundice, having diabetes, chemo, these and CK levels. What they do is they create a very heavy system. So this is just water, right? But when I'm sitting there working on someone, and this is why I load up and so forth, and I get with their system needs to be neutral. And see, no matter what I do with this container, right, it's going to respond to my touch. Now, if my touch is bad, you can see the water gets really violent really quick. If I'm not using rotation and all I'm doing is tapping the bottom of this sucker, and this is where I don't like a lot of therapies that go into a tapping or pressing, because I need a very extreme sense of balance to respond to this. Now, if I'm fighting in karate, I'm used to being hit like that, so I'm going to hold it. And that's where that's part of the karate lessons, is learning how to be hit and stay upright, right? And so forth. But when you have a child, and you can call it low tone, high tone, whatever you want, but when their system responds way too violently with in between, they will never have the muscle structure, high or low, to deal with that. So when you add rotation, it just immediately, I can go really fast, but it'll start stabilizing. I can't get violent moves when I use rotation. So that's where, again, movement lesson is so crucial when you know you have elevated levels. Now, the next way, we have to look at the stress of the elevated level. Now, this is a thicker system response. So again, when I tap, the thud stays with him. It's not as violent, but it's slower, right? So, and it clings. So when I'm doing a movement, this is again where you're getting out of with movement lesson, you gotta get slow. If I'm dealing with fluid in the ears, if I'm dealing with, again, like my son's infection, high CKs levels, I work with NCAGE, which is high I might be saying that wrong, but glycemic index is too high, and things like that. There's again, I have a munchkin I see in from Canada, where the one ventricle is fine with fluid, but the other ventricles in the brain are not. It is going to throw off their balance. What does that mean? It's sort of like, okay, in this part of the brain, I have good movement, but in this part of the brain, and you can see that, it's easy to see how the responses to movement are completely different with different fluids. When a child even has jaundice, their system gets slower, their system gets heavier. So one of the reasons why tummy time is so important is because your baby is going all around, and their mucus is very thin, much thinner than ours. That's why I can be like this right now, and I don't have anything coming out of my nose. But they're meant to have tummy time. They're meant to drool, because every cavity in the head is getting a vestibular system created based off of the input of proper tummy time. So tummy time, when they're forcing their head down and can't do that, they can't, what you're looking for, lift the head and all of this sort of stuff, no pubic bone engagement, no pelvic engagement, you're not going to get the same fluid dynamics. If I'm here, you know what I mean? Like, this is where my fluid's going to be versus a tummy time where I can bring my head up, right? And that kind of thing. And you can see when I do something like this, in the thicker fluid, you see the drip factor and how it stays to the top of the glass. And that's another thing, especially sugar. We weren't meant to have a 300 sugar. So if I go like this and come back, right, there's no water left on the top of the bottle. I don't have the residuals of movement. And when you have residuals of movement, like this is still all blue, and I'm here and I'm coming back, right, now I'm lifting. This is where you're seeing kiddos and people are looking for plank. Oh, if only your baby got stronger. You can't be strong enough to lift that. You just can't. And that's where, again, the movement lesson touch is you need to be able to show the system movements as if they're okay, even when they're not. Right? This is where, like, when someone comes to me and says, well, my kid will never walk, or you haven't seen anyone this bad. I get it. I work with very severe cases, and I'm not here to say, oh, everybody's going to walk just because they're with me. I mean, you know, especially, let's say, near drownings. It's just, we need to stop it. So when you're coming into those kind of things, but I never work on somebody that they're not going to do it. But I can tell you right now, if their system is heavy, they're not going to do it. Because one of my gravitational theories is when the mass supersedes the might, the mass will win. Just like I have this star, right? Or again, this looks like the same bottles. Well, this one's heavier, right? That's what CK is. So every movement I'm doing with a lift or that heaviness, right? Versus here. See how there's more weight transfer, right? There's not so much here. And it can change by the microsecond. You know, my dad has a diabetic meter, and you're seeing from 63 to 270. You know, that's a huge difference in weight change. And you might think, oh, no big deal. But his movements are already so horrible anyway, and he doesn't work with me, so it's not my fault. And you just see those dynamics, or when I'm working with someone that's had chemo, even years after the fact, the way that that kind of medication also gets into the sutures and so forth, you know, they get out of bed like they feel like they're old, right? That's the connotation. I'm old. It's hard for me to get out of bed. Your baby shouldn't be fighting to get out of bed. And that's where a lot of developmental delays come from. So you want to be able, the first thing you're going to do with the touch is that weight transfer, right? And that's what you're going to go after, because anything that a baby does that they find difficult or it hurts them, they're going to avoid it or deviate or not do it. Babies don't say, you know, like my doll. My doll isn't sitting there like, this rolling over stuff is for birds. I'm going to work on it a couple weeks from now. It doesn't happen like that, because there's no bad touch, there's no bad movement. Ooh, there's a ball. Oops, I'm on my belly. You know what I mean? And that's how development should happen, right? But this, again, is work, high CK levels. This is not. You need to work on them to show them that it's not work. The more weight transfer I can offer this fluid dynamics, the more I'm going to get functional movement. If that fluid dynamics doesn't give me weight transfer, I'm not going to get development. That's the equation. It's just that simple. And that's what we're looking for, is development. So when there's something wrong with your child, you need to just go back to those foundational, like the breathing course is free. It's amazing. There's these 6 steps that you can do, like 6 free lessons that I put out there, and I'll give you the links to that. Start with that. Don't overwhelm yourself. But when you have elevation issues, that's the killer, right? You think you are high and then normal and high and normal. When your body gets hit with that high, it's really hard for them to find normal again, because it's like, oh, I went to lift my head up. Oh, you know, I don't know if any of you, let's say, suffered from migraines or a headache, even just once, or the flu. You know, that sensation of like, just like, oh, I just got to get up. we can't let the babies be in that position, right? And there are a lot of medical complications that can happen, even just an IV. If they feel that sensation, it's not that they're going to give up. They don't know to push through it. They don't know to go experience it another time. They don't know it. You know, again, I use the analogy all the time, and this is a perfect example. I've been to Bhutan twice. I'm very fortunate. But if you don't know or have never heard of the country, you're not getting a ticket. It's not that you can't. You could go to Bhutan like this afternoon, and it'll be amazing. But if you don't know it exists, you're not looking for it. That is the biggest interruption to your baby's development if something like that happens, because they don't know to look at it. You can call it spasticity, but they don't know to look for active passive muscles. You can call it floppy or low tone. They're not looking for weight transfer and transitional skills because it's just not in their system. They haven't experienced it. And that's where we come into play as parents, and we can help our child. That's all. Thanks.